I was scrolling Twitter again, which is always a mistake, and I came across this tweet from Rod, which has gone quite viral with 8.9 million views. And he said how he spent a month in Japan and how he thinks in many ways it's better than living in the US. And this is the perfect meme of place versus place Japan, because just because you've been there for a month doesn't mean it's such a great place. Vacation is always different from living. Also, first of all, I have nothing against him. I'm sure he's a pretty nice guy in private, but I just want to go over his tweet real quick and say something about the 15 points he's making. The first point he makes is the safety that you can feel, and it's something I can definitely agree with in the aspect that Japan is probably safer than most countries. However, he gives an example how he was chased by homeless people in San Francisco. And while you're probably not going to get chased by homeless people in Japan, you definitely will get talked to a lot by promoters for their hostess clubs. Maybe not in districts like Akihabara, but if you have ever been to Harajuku or Shinjuku, there's not a single second where there's not some guy trying to tell you how like the hostess club has very nice girls and how you should go inside. And they will fight tooth and nail to get you into those host clubs. So while you're getting chased by homeless people, you definitely get harassed by these kinds of promoters. And like I said, it's not exclusively to Shinjuku and Harajuku. It can happen in other places too. Maybe not as likely, but it can happen if that's something you're not really into. The second point he makes is how there are vending machines everywhere. By the way, the video he puts in the background is the Sagamihara vending machine park, if you're interested. And I think the vending machines are kind of overrated in Japan. It's great that you have an option to get a drink or a snack everywhere, but Japan is also a place that has a convenience store around every corner. So the vending machines are kind of redundant. And I think the reason he likes the vending machines are not that they exist, because they exist also in other countries, also in the US. It's more that the vending machines in Japan are quite affordable. If you just want a quick bottle of water and you're on the street, you can trust the vending machines to be very cheap for like 100 yen or something, which are quite affordable. And I wish more countries did that. But other than that, I think this point is a little bit overrated. It's great, but it's not something I would say that makes it such a great country. The third point is the silence he mentions. And I have to disagree with this because, especially in Tokyo, it's a very loud city. There's always something going around, always cars, people talking, or loud music going on. So him saying there are not people wearing like headphones, I think that's not true. I've seen people with headphones all the time. So maybe he had just some good locations where there were not many people with headphones, but I don't think this is true. The next point is really rude. He says, how does virtually no fat people around? First of all, what do you have against fat people? And second of all, while that may be true, that's also because of the beauty standards that's forced upon the Japanese people. Most people are told that they need to be thin, they need to eat very little, which is not something I really want to promote, so I don't think this is something you should glorify in Japan. There's nothing wrong with being fat or thin, so it's really, really weird that he's making this point, and really rude again. This point is something I heavily disagree with. He says how there's no public trash cans, but this is something that annoyed me a lot in Japan, because sometimes you just buy something from the convenience store or from a food store, and you have this trash on your hand, and there's no trash cans anywhere. You have to walk to the nearest train station or bring the trash home with you and separate it there, which many people, by the way, expect you to do in Japan. So this is something I disagree with. I wish there were more trash cans in Japan. This is really annoying. Like when you're in Japan and you don't find trash cans to throw away your trash, that really annoyed me. This point is kind of like in the same vein as the silence, how people are not on their phones too much. Again, he has a pretty good example here. Like you don't really see many people walking around with a phone or have headphones, but it's not something you won't encounter in Japan. Many people are on the phone, many people are listening to music, so yeah. And it's also not really something I would say that makes it better than other countries. This guy's probably on his phone right now and probably when he walks anywhere to any point. So I don't think really it's a point that you need to make. how that makes Japan better than other countries. So yeah, 7th point is something I don't really get, and it's the patience. And he says how jaywalking is almost non-existent. While they don't do it as much during the day, they absolutely do it during the night. And not all walk signals have a countdown. Maybe more in the centralized areas, but not on every traffic light. And this is not really something that like makes Japan special, in my opinion. Like, sure, they are patient, but sometimes too patient. They're the same kind of people that want to wait like 3 hours for some onigiri. So I don't know why that's a point you want to glorify. Next point is going to be very contested, and that's the bidets. You won't find them on every toilet in Japan, on every public toilet at least. Most of the times you will just find the normal toilets. And if you're really unlucky, you'll find only the squatting toilets, which are horrible. But yeah, it's not like, if you like bidets, then just get one for your home. I don't think it's a point you need just to come to Japan. But if you like them, I guess it's a valid point to make, but I don't think it's that special. This point comes across as very weird, because I think individualism is something that's great, especially in America. In Japan, there's a saying that's called, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So you won't have that many instances of expression in Japanese people, which I think it's kind of a shame, because their culture is so interesting. So I don't know why you would make the argument this is great for Japan. I think this is something that makes it look worse, in my opinion, even. Point number 10 kind of doesn't make sense to me. And that's how the children clean up after themselves. It's a very nice mindset that they start to learn from a young age, but that's not something that will immediately affect you if you go to Japan right now. You will not notice it. I don't know why he brings it up. I guess it's interesting if you want to have kids in Japan, but other than that, it's kind of a irrelevant point to bring up. Point 11 is pretty debatable. I think Japan is still lagging behind in some areas. Sure, they have very innovative ideas, but simple things like paying with card is very difficult to do in Japan. Not many stores accept them. Yes, something like a McDonald's or a 7-Eleven will accept them, but most stores don't accept them. Even something like a electronics store won't accept card, which is weird. So I think it's debatable. If he thinks they're living in the future, that's a fair point to make, I think. But I think they're lagging behind. The 12th point kind of doesn't sound like a compliment for Japan, in my opinion. He's commenting a little bit on the declining birth rate, which, if you're going to comment on that, that's not a very good look for the country you're trying to say is in some aspects better than the US. But if he wants to comment on that, I guess it's fair, but it's not really speaking for Japan. Point 13, I'm just going to agree with him here. They're very punctual, and I wish other countries would adopt this as well, especially expanding the public transport system, not just in the US, but in general, everywhere in the world should be better. But yeah, I agree with him. The next point he makes is that the customer service is unparalleled, and I disagree with it personally. I prefer the customer service from the US because it's friendlier. The one from Japan can come off as stiff and a little bit forced at times. It feels like they want to go the extra mile, but I wouldn't say it's creepy, but it can make you a little bit uncomfortable if you're not used to it. But if you prefer that, then I think it's a valid point. So I wouldn't say he's wrong in this aspect. It's his opinion after all, but I disagree with it. The last point he makes is just his personal preference, so I won't comment on that. To summarize, this guy clearly has a very naive view of Japan, which I don't blame him for. As a tourist, you will only see the good sides, but living and visiting are two different things. If you plan on living in Japan, you also have to view all the bad sides that comes with it. But what do you think? Is Japan the greatest country in the world, or are we just overhyping things?